Yeah, hi, welcome back. Now let us now look at visualizing some of the data, okay? Performing some data visualization after we have imported our data into R, okay, into RStudio. So once you have opened your RStudio, now what I'm going to use R code which I've prepared for you guys for practice. So you look at lecture 2 R codes, practice. So first of all, I would want you to copy this part of the code, okay? This first part of the code. And I've also provided some explanations to you, okay? Some explanation for the codes. Okay. So now let us open a new R script. I can just hit on these two bars to open it and then let me paste. Okay. All right, so let me enlarge this. Okay, so now that I have this, what I'm going to do is, so first of all, I'm going to read the iris data, okay? So what I have is iris underscore data, and then I have to know the location of the iris data, okay? So, and I'm going to do the reading using the read underscore CSV, okay? Which is a package which is coming from the which if you haven't already activated this package, you have to do that before you can use the read underscore. So let's say you have to use the read package. With this read package is coming from the tidyverse, okay? So if you haven't also installed the tidyverse package, you have to install the tidyverse package, okay, to be able to use it. But I've already installed it. I've also already activated, or I can use the read the library read to load the package read. Now I have to look for the location of this file, okay? Again, let me look at, so once I go to the iris, I right click on it, and then I look at the properties, go to the location, I copy it, and then I have to paste it here. And then I have to add the iris. So iris dot CSV, okay? But then I also have to change all the location, the backslash to /. Okay. So now that I have done that, I can go ahead and run this line of the code. Okay. So once I've run this line of the code, I can, if I want to see the structure of the code, I can actually go ahead and then I want to see the structure of the code. So you use the str function to see the structure of the data set, okay? So now I want to see the structure. So this is the structure of the data set, okay? Yeah, but I usually prefer setting up the directory, okay? So setting up the working directory, usually I prefer to set up the working directory, which is the folder in which the iris data is found, and then read from that working directory. So this is a working directory. Let me copy it. Copy, and then paste. Okay, so there's also another way to actually read it. So assuming, let me clear the environment. I don't need this one, yes. And then also Control L, okay. Now, assuming I want to use the set as, I want to set the working directory, I now use the set WD, and then into bracket, I copy the location of the iris, which will be my working directory Okay. Now, once I've done that, now I said, okay, I will then use read.csv, okay? Read.csv, and then the data already is having heading or it's having column name. So I said that header is called true. Okay, so let me run it. Now again, under the environment, I have the data uploaded or imported. So what can I do is I can now ask R that, okay, I want to know if the data contains missing values, okay? So I use what the function called is.na, is.na, and then I put in the data set. Now remember, I call the data iris data. So is.na iris data. Now it's going to tell me whether or not there is how they call NA in the data. Now, what R does at this stage is actually print out all the data set, which if you have a huge data with, let's say, millions of data, that is going to be a mess for you to do. But regardless, where there is NA, it's right there true. So for instance, all the true you are seeing here means that there is that particular value was missing for that particular variable, okay? Again, don't use the SNA on a data frame if you have a huge amount of data. But then you can sum up the NAs, okay? You use the sum function, okay? So you say sum in a parenthesis is NA of the data set, okay? Now, with that, if you run this entire sum code of the SNA of the data, it tells you that, oh, how many missing values do you have in the data? 33, okay? So if you have 33 missing values in the data, what then do? You don't want to work with the missing data, right? So if you don't want to work with the missing data, R allow you to be able to actually remove all missing data, okay? And to be able to remove all the missing data, you use a function called n.omit, and then you use it on your data frame, okay? So by so doing, R goes into the data and delete every row of the data that has an NA, okay? So for any given row or observation in the data which have an NA of any of the columns, it will just delete the entire row. So even if you have, let's say you have 10 columns, okay? And then let's say row 1, all the columns are having data except only one column. R is just going to delete the entire row, even though it has data in all the columns except one column. And that is what removing missing data actually does, okay? So let's name our new data clean, this is iris underscore data, okay? And we are going to assign that new data, which is going to be a clean data, to NA omit of the iris data, which means we are removing the missing data. We are missing values from the data. Let's run it. Now, once we have run it, we can go ahead and then, let's say, we can use, if you want to be sure whether the clean underscore iris data, which is the new data, does not have missing value, we can use the sum of is.na function of our new data, which is the clean iris data, okay? Now let us look at it. Now the sum is equals to 0, which means this data set does not have any missing information. Now we can use it for our further analysis. Now, one thing you can also do is also to perform a statistical summary of your data set, of your new clean data set, okay? Now let us perform a statistical summary of the main data set, which is the iris data, the main data set. And then now let us perform the statistical analysis of also the clean data, and let's see the difference. So with the main data set, which is not clean, now you can see separ length Okay, SEPA length is having some any, which is 13 NS. SEPA width 13 NS. Petal length 7 NS. Petal width has no NA, and then we don't have any for the species, okay, which is a character variable, okay? So now let us look at what about the clean data? So it says, let us look at iris.clean. So it says cleaned. So now remember it says, now when the reason for the error is the fact that this is clean iris, clean underscore iris underscore data. But the cleaned data is, it uses ED as part of the cleaned, okay? So which means we have to correct this one and make it clean, okay? Oh, oops. So cleaned underscore iris underscore data. Okay, let's run this. Okay, so now you see that there is no any NS, okay, in this particular data set. Now, what we can also actually do is to also export the data set, okay? So first of all, we can actually use this one, the write underscore CSV clean, okay, to replace the desired file path, okay, which we wouldn't actually want to do, okay? Usually you wouldn't want to, you might want to still keep your old file, so we are not going to run this. But then we can export this clean data in an CSV file, okay? So let us call this, we are going to export this clean iris data, okay? So again, we also use the function, the export function, okay? So we use the export function, and before you use the export function, make sure you load this particular library, which is called the Rio library, okay? If you haven't installed already, you have to first of all install the Rio library before you can export. So what do we want to export? We want to export the iris and the iris clean data set. And let's say we just want to name it cleaned iris, okay? And now let us, once we have run it, again, if we go to our files, under files, we can actually see that we are going to have iris cleaned, okay? Okay. So, yeah, so we are going to have, the name is cleaned iris. So this is cleaned C. So this is the data set. But how you find it is if you go to your document, usually I'll put it in the document and this is the data set, okay? And you can actually open that data set to see whether the data set has any missing information. So this is the data set, which is now does not have any missing information inside. But if you actually look at, so no, this is not the iris data. Okay, so let us clean the iris. Let's look at for it. Okay. So clean iris.csv. Let's look at for the data set. Usually is okay. Let's give it another name, maybe probably my underscore clean iris data, and then let's run it. So what we are saying is that we want to have this clean iris data, okay? Okay, let us see whether we now have it. Another document, my Irish data. Okay, so probably let's look into our data set and see whether, oh, okay, so now it actually save it in our folder, in our data set folder, okay? So it's actually save it in our data set folder, and then the other one was also saved. So there are instances in which once we set, remember what happened was we set the working directory. So what then happened is that now R is able to directly export our clean data into that working directory.